Hello, hello. How's
Hi.
everyone doing?
Hello.
Good. How are you guys?
Doing great, doing great. It's been slightly a hectic day, but we're making it through, making it through. Yeah, it's super wonderful to have everyone join us today. I know it's like have a lot of really cool panels for the day. I know Vic was on the earlier one about women in tech. It was super wonderful to hear, and yeah, same with the fireside chat. It was really nice. This panel slash chat is going to be more about non-traditional paths in tech. So people who have not formally studied CS at like a university level, but are nonetheless pursuing careers in the field anyways, and just like showing all the cool things you people have been up to. But yeah, if we want to get started, do you guys want to quickly do a brief intro of yourself?
Sure. Go for it.
Yeah, I can start off. I'm Victoria. For those of you joining us again, you might have seen me in the fireside chat just an hour earlier. I'm in my 5th year at UBC right now, studying econ. As a career, I've done communications, marketing, as well as community building and product management. And so that's sort of I guess my path in terms of studying econ, but doing something else in terms of my career. And I'm also the 5th year. I'm also the sponsorship director at NW Plus, and I've been in this club for 3 years.
That's really cute. I'm currently a programmer at a startup called Cohere AI, where I work on infrastructure to serve our large transformer models. I previously worked at Shopify for a bit. I've only ever worked in tech, actually. I was a ski instructor for a bit. And I think I once tried something else, but I ended up not going to school because I really sucked at it. And here I am.
Cool. Yeah, that's really interesting. I think one like oh, actually, it looks like we have a few audience questions, so we'll jump into those right away. But I have a few questions I do want to ask both of you later as well. Question from Melvin is: have you ever experienced favoritism in the workplace? Of like employers emphasizing people who have like traditionally studied tech or whatever, um, basically showing favoritism towards those people rather than people coming from, I guess, non-traditional backgrounds like yourself.
Uh, I would say no, but the selection bias is that I got hired in the first place. But I will say that there are a lot of like really, really great companies like Shopify, another startup I worked at, Cohere, that will like not judge you for not having a non-traditional background, and like also see it in many ways as like an advantage you have of like above other people.
I think similar actually. I haven't really witnessed any of that bias too much. I think especially in like startups and stuff, I haven't really experienced it. A little bit in bigger tech and industry, but I think the important thing to note is that there's a difference between like coming from a non-traditional background and not coming from a technical background, but then that doesn't mean you might still have technical skills. So I think that's the difference. Yeah.
So I guess the follow-up question is like coming from a non-traditional background, how do you acquire those technical skills in the first place?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of self-learning for myself, really around just what interests me, and what I'm interested in at the time. Also, once you get into the work, I think what you need to know is a lot more apparent, and so I go through a lot of growth in the various like roles I've done in the past.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Self-learning is very obviously the way to go, and I think it's like a very default answer because it is consensus slightly the correct one. That like if you work on a project that teaches you what you need to learn, and does it pretty quickly.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, next question is from Lucy. What compelled you to work in the tech industry versus other industries or like the industries that you originally first like set out to study?
Sorry, was that for myself? I think I missed the question.
I
Sorry.
think either or is good,
Oh,
but like
okay.
what compels you to work in tech versus other industries essentially is the question.
Okay, okay. Hmm. Let me think about this. Yeah, I think for myself it was probably like the fast pacedness and the amount of like growth opportunity there's. Yeah. What about you, Carol?
I think for me, it was a lot of just like it was like the right thing at the right time. It's obviously a lot of fun. You get to build things, impact, whatnot. But for me, it's like one of the few places where you don't have to go to school, which again, hate that stuff. And it's also a bit of that like I usually recommend people when they make career choices that they do what they're good at, and that happened to work out for me.
Do you think like self-learning is like an acquired like can you teach yourself to self-learn better, or is it something that is like more innate?
I think you can definitely like improve on how you self learn. In terms of like if you're like teaching it to yourself in a traditional sense, hard to say. But I do think people get better at it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I guess another question from Jenny is, how do you think your non-traditional, I guess, like educational background have helped you in your career in tech?
I think for myself, I had a lot more reading and writing, like writing in a, I guess, more like analytical way experience. So my first role that I did was communications, and although I hadn't studied communications or technical writing or any of that, I just naturally had done a lot of papers at school, and a lot of essays around economics, and so that kind of helped me leverage that skill when I was applying or trying to get my foot through the door in tech at first.
Oh, I'm gonna go too. Sorry, what was the question again? Oh my gosh. Hi.
Yeah, no worries. It was like a question from Jenny is, how do you think your, I guess, non-traditional educational background has helped you in your career in tech so far?
I think the easiest answer for me is that I saved 4 years of my life. um, it is a lot of time, and I think like university is not like a waste. It's pretty productive, but if you could like take whatever percentage isn't and like repurpose that, that's been pretty valuable.
Yeah, I guess more specific question for you specifically, like what was your like main driving factor in choosing to, I guess, like forgo university altogether and just like I'm guessing that must have been like a decision that you had to think through for a little bit before like fully committing to. So it's like, what was your thought process when doing that?
Uh, it's a tricky one. Lots of things. A lot of them were like very personal, so maybe not that helpful. I think the general process was that. So I guess like one thing I believe about like not going to school is that the decision isn't about like quote unquote like how good you are. Like the decision isn't like are you good enough to forego going to school, but rather if it's the right thing for you. And like I think like not liking school is like a common reason. I think it's also to remember to think about if you're good at it and if you find it productive. In terms of like the personal decision, I realized that like I might be worse off without school, but I would save 4 years of suffering, and that felt pretty valuable to me.
That's very valid. That's very valid. Next question is from Victoria. To both of you, is there anything you wished you knew, you wished you would have known when you were first entering the tech industry?
I'm thinking.
Yeah, I'm thinking as well. I almost feel like I've I've almost like just entered, not just entered the tech industry, but I feel like I might not have like lived in tech enough to answer this. But I guess like maybe for my first year self, or like when I was trying to get my first foot through the door, um, is that like nobody knows everything. Like people don't know as much as you think they do, and it's really around just like leveraging your passion and your ability to learn, than like just knowing a bunch of jargon. So yeah, that would be mine.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of like your job is probably a lot less programming than you would expect. Whether it's like still technical work in terms of like research and documentation and experimenting versus like non-programming work like just filling out reports and stuff. And it's all a part of not just like being a good employee, but being able to like build production services and products.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And one question for another audience member, Marissa, like what do you recommend are the first steps to getting into, I guess, like self-learning within the tech industry? I think for a lot of people, they've never really had, I guess, the exposure to really teaching themselves unless they had like a really bad teacher in high school where they're like, okay, my teacher doesn't teach me anything, so I have to learn the course material myself. But like aside from that, how do you even get started like learning how to like learn by yourself, I guess?
Hackathons might be the right place. Worked for me, worked on my machine. I think my experience was a bit like rocky in that it was a very thrown in a fire. I spent like the first few hackathons mostly just copying and pasting code to make crappy websites with all the like documentation comments left in, and like it works. You'll eventually get there one day. You'll go from copying code to being able to copy and read the code and then, edit a few lines. And then the next thing you know, you're writing it yourself.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I added the self-resources guide that actually came out as a project from NW. And I feel like it's a really good introduction if anyone wants to check it out. It's in the Discord. Oh, Jackie, you're muted.
Lots of behavior. Yeah, so Carmen, I think, is also one of our panelists, but she is answering virtually. I don't think she can make her is at her computer right now, but I'm going to echo one of the responses that she wrote out in the Discord. It was in response to Victoria's question about, I think the question itself was like, is there anything you wish you knew about tech before you got into the industry? Carmen's answer was, in high school, I wish I knew more about the different paths, such as SFU's SIAT program and UBC's cognitive systems. I was undecided in high school, and I'm glad I got to explore, but it would have been nice to know more of my options beforehand. Yeah, which is a really interesting response. But yeah, that sounds really interesting. And Victoria, I guess this is more of a question for you, but yeah, like going into university or like applying to university, even like, was tech even like a career option in the back of your mind and during that process, like even just like choosing what to study? And do you think like at like what point in your university career where you're like, okay, maybe tech is something I do eventually want to pursue?
That's a good question. To the university one, I absolutely had no idea. Like, I did not understand that tech was an industry, or even what it was or what I could do. I very much, when I was planning to go to university in high school, up until like the summer of grade 12, I thought I was going to go into nursing. So all of this is very new to me. I say this pretty often, but my introduction to tech, I owe a lot of that to my brother. I have a brother 5 years older than me, and he has just naturally always been the mentor figure in my life. And he's a very just big tech person, always been in tech. And so just looking at him and looking at his footsteps, I think I naturally just was like, oh, that looks really cool. We get to do so many interesting things that you even get to like you even get to kind of like live off your passion, which I thought was really interesting. And so yeah, I would say in first year, when I looked at my brother who would have just recently graduated, go into tech, that's what made me realize that this could be a path for me too.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I guess not so much a follow-up question, but a question for both of you is, I know like even within like as a person who studies CS, sometimes I find it really hard to find like a community of individuals who are also interested in just like building stuff in tech and finding a community of people who like get excited about things the way that you do. And I can imagine that's also especially difficult for people who like this isn't even the thing you're studying in university, right? So I guess the question is like, how do you build up a community around yourself to like find people to work on projects with, or to like basically just like nerd out about cool stuff that you're interested in with?
I don't think it was ever that tricky. I think a lot of it was solved for me by like having gone to have a lot of hackathons. I don't know. I'm pretty online. That does something too. I'm on Twitter a lot. That might be helpful. And yeah, there are lots of like just communities to jump into where a lot of them might seem a bit like meh at the beginning, which is probably true for most things. That most communities don't go that very well. You might like make one or two acquaintances there that you maybe run into and work with.
I guess kind of similar. It wasn't too difficult for me, but I think it's definitely because I joined NW Plus. And this is not even a plug, but I joined NW in second year, and so after joining NW, it was just natural that I'd meet a lot of people interested in the same things as me. And also, I guess I wanted to touch on. I joined an entrepreneurship club in my first year, and I think there's a lot of overlap between entrepreneurship and tech sometimes, and so that helped me a lot too to find my community there.
Yeah, sounds good. And I guess, was there any point in like, I guess after committing to doing more of like a tech side of your career, do you ever have any hesitations or like regrets like halfway through, like, okay, maybe tech isn't right for me, and like how did you push through that and like get to where you are now?
I think the trickiest thing for me is that like that question is valid in that I've never tried anything else. So that is something that occasionally crosses my mind, and I think it's a good question. I don't push through it. I am slowly considering trying something else. Um,
Yeah, I think I'm similar. I've always, even just the startups that I've been involved in, it's always been around tech. So I don't have much experience, but I think I still, and this might just be a natural like upbringing thing, but I still sometimes think about like, oh, should I have gone into like medicine or like nursing or something? It still crosses my mind even now.
Hmm. And did you ever like receive, I guess, like pushback from peers like after like deciding to, I guess more specifically for Vic, who like you studied I guess like commerce and like more businessy side of things in university, so like especially after deciding to head into more of like a tech side of things, did you ever have peers that were like, oh, what are you doing, like this isn't what you studied? So like, how do you deal with peers having like some sort of pushback or whatnot?
Yeah, I think there was definitely a moment in so I studied econ, and a traditional thing to do in econ is to go into consulting. And there was a moment where all of my friends were doing like consulting boot camps and learning how to do cases. And I had this weird fear of, should I be trying that too, even though that's not necessarily the career path that I want to go into. So I wouldn't say it's pushback. It's more so like self-inflicted in that I would kind of overthink of like what they might think about me, or is it weird that I'm not prepping for this, or yeah, just things like that. But overall, I think especially even within the past 5 years, tech has become so much more popular. So I haven't really received that much pushback.
Cool. And yeah, Jan, another audience question, is asking Carol if you can share your Twitter. I think they're interested in
oh
following.
no. Okay, it's KIPPERRII.
Okay, I will find a link and then send it. But yes, that sounds good. And yeah, Twitter is definitely the place to be if you want to also meet more tech like-minded people for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I think Jenny's also asking Vic to share your Twitter as well. So we can definitely do a Twitter plug after this.
Yeah.
But yeah, another question from Jenny is, do you have any tips for networking or just meeting like-minded people I guess like another way to phrase the question is like how do you approach networking, especially in this industry?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a bit more recently because I didn't think about it before. Um, I think one of the weird things about networking is that what I want out of it is not a connection, but to be able to ask favors of people, like whether it's like referral or like help on a thing or to connect me with someone or to answer a question. And I find that that's always easier when you're friends with someone versus when you've had a 30-minute what do you do conversation. Um, and it's, yeah, that's it. That's just spiel.
Yeah, I think I would say the same.
That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, question from Chris, also from the audience. How cool were your previous co-interns? I'm guessing this is in reference to if you've interned at places before. How were your coworkers there, and like how did they treat you?
Yeah, I can go. So when I was interning, it was like a cohort of like 120 interns, and it was the best time. I think if my work did not have such cool, just like people and interns and such a lively community like that, it would not have been the same. And it's almost to the point where a lot of people from this company, when they go full time, they miss their intern years so much, and just that community. So yeah, my co-interns were super amazing.
Yeah, I also really like my coworkers. um, I mean, oh no, work-life balance. I'm like still friends with like a bunch of my like co-interns from Shopify. I'm one of those people who hangs out with their managers. I still do that with my old managers at Shopify. I think like one of the coolest people I met at Shopify is also someone who didn't go to college, didn't study computer science, and before he was at Shopify as a tech intern, he was a farmer and also a chef at a Michelin star restaurant in Hong Kong.
Oh
So really
wow,
cool
Impressive.
people.
that's so cool.
Shopify is not a bad place to
Yeah, bring
be.
him onto the panel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Oh, and Chris clarified this is from Chris Dryden, and apparently you worked across from each other at Shopify. So
Yes. Oh my God. Hi, Chris.
what a small world. That's so funny. Yeah, and another I guess great question that I think could be cool to hear both of your opinions on is like how do you choose good companies to work at? I know it's like I think both of you have like worked at quite a like various types of companies throughout industry. It's like how do you choose between like startups, medium-sized companies, big tech, and even like within tech there's a bunch of like sub-industries, like whether you want to do fintech, like e-commerce, or like machine learning stuff. Yeah, it's like there's a lot of options. It's like how do you figure out what you want to do or like what you like?
Yeah. Choosing it what I like. I think Shopify obviously like vibes very well, and it was very up and coming, especially in 2018 when I went. So that was most of it. When I joined the current company I'm at, Cohere, the answer is that I rolled the dice on it. I was like, I've been at Shopify for a while. I don't know what a neural network is, but I'll find out. That was kind of it, and it was a okay bet.
Yeah, I think for myself, when I was first trying to get into tech, I didn't really feel like I had a lot of options. So many of you may relate to this if you're finding your first internship. For my first one, I very much just applied everywhere and like to any position, even if I didn't feel like I was qualified. And then I remember having a choice between going to like a smaller startup or going to SAP in my first year. And then I had this advice from a mentor that essentially said that like it's really nice to have corporate like bigger tech experience and understand how things work in a company and then move on to smaller companies. I'm not too sure how true that is, but for myself at least it did help me kind of like learn the random etiquettes first, and then after when I went to a startup it felt less daunting, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I think there's like a thing that is probably the case where startups are bad places for like very junior people to be. It's just harder for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting take. Do you want to like elaborate? Like, why do you think startups are bad for more junior people?
I think they require a lot of like just like not specifically work experience, but like people who know how they work, what the process is like, what they find productive, how to like tile their calendars. And it's a lot of like the self-directedness is also difficult, not just as a matter of like ambition, but in terms of like you have to have some level of competency to be able to do this self-direction. And it's a lot of pressure. And I think, especially for the young people, it's more productive for them to have less pressure and more space for like saying, hey, I want to spend like, I want a 20% project, or I want to, spend a few weeks just like reading up and experimenting with this new technology I haven't heard of, where that is often less of an option at startups.
And I guess as like a follow-up bit, do you feel like, I guess, the mentorship aspects between like different size companies like matters a lot? I know for a lot of people, like mentorship is a really big part of like how they get their, I guess, like stronghold or footing in the industry. Is like, I guess, like your approach to like finding mentors, is that mostly through companies you've worked at, or just like reaching out to random people you admire or look up to, I guess, or anything else?
I think a little bit of reaching out to people. I think reaching out to people is usually it's been surprisingly unproductive for me. It's really hard to find the exact right person to reach out to and tell them the exact correct thing so that they can tell me the correct things. So I think most of my productive mentorship has been at like companies I worked at, or at least people who have worked closely with me.
Mm-hmm. I think I would say the same. My most productive mentorship has been my previous manager, and very similar to Carol. Like I was also one of those people that like hung out with her. Like I went all the way to Montreal to see her, and yeah, we still like text each other. It's great. So, yeah,
That's really funny. And yeah, another comment from Victoria. Your Twitters are so cool. Do you have any advice for individuals who want to start sharing their thoughts with the world but are nervous about the permanency of the internet or simply get self-conscious? I definitely feel with this one as well. I think when I first started like throwing stuff out into the world, I was just really self-conscious. It's like, what if I'm perceived, Like I don't want to be perceived, but at the same time expressing thoughts. Yeah, I'm curious if y'all have thoughts on that.
Oh gosh, my Twitter is a little bit unhinged. Sometimes I tweet things on my private alt first. I don't know how solid of an advice that is. I do think like one tweet policy I try to do is I try to not tweet about not liking things.
I like that.
Mm-hmm. I guess like specifically, how do you work on the like self-consciousness part of like feeling okay about like sharing your stuff into the world? Whether that be like tweets or projects or writing or whatever.
I think for me, the part that really sold it wasn't like really working on myself, but like building the right Twitter following. I think that really sold it for me, where I have like a nice Twitter following and like mutuals who like do the same things, and I have that to look up to. And then if I do like when I did like dip my toe in the water, the response was always very positive, and that was really all I needed.
Yeah. I will add on as a personal note, and I think I've went through a similar like niche finding journey on Twitter, where I just like try posting different things, see what you think feels good to post and what doesn't feel good to post, and like I don't know, narrowing it down I think helps a lot that way. But yeah, that's really cool. And I think that's been all of the audience questions so far. Yeah, I think of a few more specific questions I want to go through, but I think we're definitely getting close to wrapping up as well. I guess like finally to wrap off is like, what do you think is advice you would give to yourself like 3 or 4 years ago when you're first starting off on this journey into like I guess like either adulthood or just like trying to find your footing in career wise? Any advice?
I think I would have told myself to not try applying to school. I did apply to school. I tried very hard at applying to school. In fact, I tried so hard I did it twice. I did it 2 years, just to see if I can get it anywhere else. And I think a lot of it was just like fueled by like bitterness, and that was unproductive. And yeah, that is it.
Yeah, I think I would have told myself to follow my curiosity more, and focus on what interests me more than like ways that I can feel validated by society.
That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, okay, I think that is all in terms of all the questions that we had. I want to thank you guys so much once again for taking time to come hop on this panel with us. Appreciate y'all's time. And yeah, thanks for coming out. And we will see you in closing in a bit. But thanks again,
Thanks
everyone.
seeing you, Carol.
Wait, quick reminder for everyone who is still in here. There is also going to be a stamp collection for this workshop. So check the Discord channel for the appropriate workshop for your stamp collection. The password for this event is going to be non-tech, all lowercase, no spaces, no dashes, anything. Okay, and once again, thank you everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye.